bring in the troops and say the federal government is supreme. The immigration law is the law of the land. If you're not on board with that, you're going to jail. If you attack ICE or box them in with your car, you're going to jail for a long time.
Last question. Where is all of this going in this country? Like, where are we in 5 years?
Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes recently sat down together to warn of a horrifying path for America. And in this clip, they discuss what a correct path would be to avert that catastrophe, with Nick Fuentes favoring a iron-handed approach to produce stability in a very polarized America today. So let's see what they discuss. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Not anywhere good. I'm really concerned, and I'm not one of these doomsday sayers. You know, there's a lot of people that forever, but you know, the sky's falling every day. But I really feel like the things that concern me the most, it's the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Seemed like we crossed a Rubicon there.
I agree with that.
Because he's just a conservative guy, relatively moderate, expressing his opinions. He's not the president. He's not a politician. And it wasn't just that he got shot. It was what happened afterward, which is that 100,000 liberals went on TikTok and celebrated. And that shows that how can you integrate or harmonize with people that hate you that much? They see some, you know, and I understand that liberals thought he was a jerk. Like maybe he was a little rude or something like that. And he really wasn't. I mean, he was pretty patient as they come.
I just tried to fill in for him last week and immediately snapped at some kid and threatened to beat him up and went crazy. And I had said a prayer for patience, by the way, and I still couldn't handle it. So, you know, Charlie Kirk was a remarkably even-keeled, patient, decent man.
Yes. And yeah, so whatever their perception of him was, to see him get his face blown up in front of everybody like that, and the first reaction of someone in the crowd who was present, some guy with the beard jumps up and celebrates. Did you see this?
No.
Some liberal kid in the audience jumps up and says, "All right."
I literally can't handle it. I'm so upset by it. I haven't looked at anything.
Yeah, I mean, this was absurd, and they're right to the extent that Charlie Kirk was, if anything, a moderate on the right. He was where most of the American right is, very popular on the American right for what he did, for the debates he got into. And to consider him and portray him as some villainous radical on the right, you have no idea what's out there. I think Dave Smith put it best, that he's going to be, you know, villainized and called a fascist and the biggest hate monger that ever lived. No, this guy was the moderate. You have no idea what exists on the right. I will push back a little bit, though, on Nick. Maybe not push back. He's right. Many liberals celebrated this moment on TikTok. They took the opportunity to do that. But that hasn't been very influential in the political establishment. There's really been no establishment Democrat that has celebrated this, that has said, you know, this is worthy of adulation and praise that this heinous act was committed. No one's willing to touch that because it would completely sink their career. This is a niche group of people that go on TikTok and, you know, make these vile celebrations, and many of them were rightly called out. And the backlash against that was palpable. Many people got fired from their jobs, perhaps rightly so, for doing that. And I wouldn't be one of these people going around calling, you know, Dollar Tree to try to get an employee canceled. One employee that was, you know, fired did come from Dollar Tree. I figure if you're working there, you're probably not in the best condition anyways. I'm not trying to disparage anyone from working there. That's an honorable profession. But at the same point, that can't be too much of a high-paying job. This was a niche group of people that celebrated this. Charlie Kirk wasn't killed by the American left. He wasn't killed by a vast swath of American leftists or even liberals. He was killed by maniacs. Maybe Tyler Robinson, maybe people related to Tyler Robinson, maybe unnamed shooters. No matter how you fall on that tree, it doesn't implicate an entire swath of a collective, you know, political ideology on this.
It's disgusting. And I saw that and said, yeah, like, there's no putting the genie back in the lamp here. That was one. The other thing I'm really worried about is what's happening at these ICE detention centers, where it's happening not far from where I live in Broadview, Illinois, where they set up an ICE detention facility. And The administration is rounding these people up, which I support, but they're doing it in a very provocative way. They're broadcasting it. They're making hype edits on Twitter of like these raids on apartment complexes, which I think are very cool, but it's somewhat provocative. And Antifa showing up. In order to protect ICE, the administration's putting DHS. Well, now they're protesting the DHS presence, and the administration of the governor of Illinois and the mayor of Chicago are telling Chicago police, don't help ICE. And they're encouraging the protesters. And what I see there is like a level of tension that just keeps increasing.
Yes.
And there's leadership. There's civilian leadership on both sides. Like the governor and mayor who are Democrats won't back down versus a Republican president. There's a security division too, the police versus ICE, the police versus DHS. There's a constitutional question about the federal supremacy, you know, and I see all the ingredients of like a low boil civil conflict, full-blown civil war. And I'm not that guy, but I see all the ingredients there for that to happen. So
I do too, but it's because of the gradual concentration of power in Washington that this is the case, that there are these small-scale civil wars that play out regardless of whether a Democrat or Republican is in power. Right now it's Trump, and we have every reason to, reject the Trumpian mantra, reject the foreign policy regime, a lot of the Trump agenda, no doubt. But I felt that same way when Biden was in power. So it wasn't even the person that was in office that was necessarily the problem. This is what I've tried to, show so many people. And this is a large reason why this channel exists, is to show that it's not the individual that is the root of the problem. They're just a symptom of the problem. The problem is concentration in the hands of a central government, a one-size-fits-all government that claims to rule over 330 million people with a bureaucracy of something like 500 people in the central government. With, I should say an oligarchy of that much, but there is a bureaucracy, a large bureaucracy around that, trying to rule over 330 million people. That's not what the founders envisioned. The founders envisioned a system of federalism where the 10th Amendment was, as Jefferson put it, essentially the cornerstone idea of the U.S. Constitution. He wrote that in his 1791 opinion on the National Bank, rejecting the prospect of a bank while Hamilton championed it, writing to Washington that I've always supposed, and that the ratifiers supposed, that this was the central idea behind this republic, that the states would hold most of the power. Same thing when it comes to immigration. The feds didn't usurp power over immigration until 1875. Before that, the states ran those things. So it's giving Washington all power over all the states and all of immigration that's caused this kerfuffle, this small-scale civil war. And I don't know, if you're a Republican that wants stricter immigration, I don't understand it. I don't understand on doubling down on the federal control over immigration that's led to, the mass introduction of 50 million people that are here illegally, maybe 30 to 50. People have all sorts of different projections for that. It's hard to know. It seems like it would actually be curtailed if you gave that power back to the states, where Texas would use it to constrain it. And, California might feel differently. But at the same time, you get a system where people actually feel like they have a choice, and have a choice where they'd prefer to live according to their values. You don't have that in this centralized government that shoves this policy down our throats no matter what.
I'm deeply concerned about where that will go.
How would you handle it if you were in charge? If you're the president, what do you do about that?
I think, maybe this is controversial, but they have to crush the other side. They have to, because you can do one of two things. You can not challenge the left and let them do their thing, or you can utterly confront them and defeat them and remove hope from the equation. If you resist, you will be arrested. Like, this is an insurrection. There's 10 million people here illegally. We're getting them out. You're rioting. You're going to jail too. Like, it has to be crushed. But if you do anything less than that, if you do in the middle, all you're doing is antagonizing and feeding the other side. And if they think there's a chance they can win, they will get bolder and stronger, and they'll start to rally. And that's when it's sort of like people think it's close or like it's contentious. That's when it breathes. That's when oxygen is fed to this kind of fire. So if I were Trump, I would say screw 200 National Guard. Like, arrest the mayor of Chicago, like arrest the governor, shut it down, like make it clear, like Washington, bring in the troops and say the federal government is supreme. The immigration law is the law of the land. If you're not on board with that, you're going to jail. If you attack ICE or box them in with your car, you're going to jail for a long time. Anything less than that, you might as well just not even bark up that tree at all.
Amazing. I mean, this was the exact Tory argument in the American Revolution. This is the argument that Tory loyalists made to, sell the idea of having the British occupy Boston. Just arrest Samuel Adams and John Hancock, bring them to justice for daring to wage non-compliance against this empire in Great Britain. And that was a big spark of the American Revolution. It's the iron-handed approach that isn't working. It's been taking its course over a century not working. This iron-handed, imposition of government power from the center, from the progressive era especially forward. We got the income tax, we got the welfare state, we got the IRS, we got a new sedition act during World War I that jailed dissidents of the war, the Great Society, we got the war on poverty, we got the war on terror during my lifetime. The imposition of power against terrorists. And by the way, if you didn't believe that was a good program, that was a good policy, you were just with the terrorists. You're part of the terrorist group. They're doing the same thing now when it comes to those that don't side with Israel. You're just part of Hamas. This centralization of power in Washington has never been to the benefit of the United States. It hasn't been to the benefit of America. I side with Jefferson when he said that, a government that governs least governs best. And the central idea of America was that most political authority would reside in the states and localities. That was to prevent the rise of a totalitarian system in which we live, where all these squabbles, these passionate squabbles, all this fervor, this polarization in America is resultant of the fact that there's way too much power in Washington. I don't see how that can be denied. So to say that you just have to crack down and arrest the governor of Illinois over this, to me, is just nonsense. And I'm sorry, I have no sympathy for J.B. Pritzker. I think he's, totally corrupt. He's a fraud. He's a fraudster. I don't have anything in common with him. But to enact a police state and arrest, state governors with no authority to do it, it just seems absurd. And Nick actually brought up the fact that there is a constitutional question over supremacy when it comes to some of these matters, especially immigration. That's true. I'm glad he said that because that shows some fair-mindedness here. But under the Constitution, immigration was a matter left to the states. The states determined who came in from foreign countries and who didn't, and that remained true for almost a century until the 1875 Page Act, in which the federal government usurped that power. They said, hey, we're just setting all the standards for immigration now. We're going to control it strictly. And at first it was controlled strictly against, Chinese people because of the Chinese exclusionary acts. They wanted to keep people away from China, etc. It's been weaponized in various directions. But even if you're a fan of Trump and this rhetoric of mass deportations, he's not even trying to do that anyway. So again, when you place this power in the hands of the feds, they're not even going to use it in ways that conservatives purport that it should be used. I think that giving it back to the states where it should reside would make there be tangible incentives for states that do want that kind of system to actually do the deportations. And besides all this, no one talks about the elephant in the room that is inducing and, encouraging a lot of these mass migration movements, and that's the welfare state. We have a welfare state here that benefits those that come here illegally and seek the benefits. And does everyone that comes here illegally do that? No. But the fact that that system remains is a mass incentive for people to come here illegally, and you just can't ignore that. I mean, conservatives should know that most of all. And if you're never going to take off the table this massive welfare state that, I'm not even just talking about individual welfare, but also welfare that benefits, firms that are close to government, if you're not even going to talk about slashing those programs and those schemes to keep people held hostage to vote for people that, will promise to expand it, I don't know what to say. We're going to be in this mess the entire time. So I disagree with Nick on this. I think that, you know, the only way to curtail this small-scale civil war is to support decentralization and, you know, soft secession and possible, you know, balkanization movements that sever the powers of American states from the federal government. That can be done peacefully. I want to be clear. I don't call for revolution or civil war. Nothing like that. More like a Brexit system where you leave a political operation or political union that you don't see any benefit from. That is what I would promote, rather than using the iron hand of government to just stick it down the throats of our political enemies. And notice that Nick used that language, insurrection. That's the same thing that the liberal establishment used against Republicans, against Nick and his friends, you know, when they're at January 6th. Not Nick, because he delivered a speech saying break the barriers and then left, but the people that went into the Capitol, and some people that didn't go into the Capitol, got arrested and faced charges for insurrection. And that was the narrative carried for the next several years. I mean, under the liberal establishment, you got Russiagate, this absurd idea that the president was colluding with Putin as he was supplying Ukraine with weapons and withdrawing from the INF Treaty and denouncing Russia for giving Snowden safe haven. They ran with that. That is what they did. And you want to just ramp that up against them and not see how that can bite you in the back from the precedents that are set by a police state arresting the state governors? What makes you think that when your party isn't in power, that won't happen to your guys? Nothing. This is just a, you know, this is a formula for disaster, for it to just completely continue to be ramped up. We need political decentralization more than we've ever needed since 1776, I hate to say. But I do want to hear from you. Am I right? Am I off base on this? Who do you agree with more, me or Nick? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Tucker. Thank you for this interview. Great conversation regardless of how you stand on it. And if you like this video, please consider becoming a YouTube member. You can do that by clicking the join button below. If you do that, you'll help support my channel. That'd mean the world to me, by the way, and I'd really appreciate it. And in return for your good deed, I'll give you access to all of my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. Also, if you want a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic, that tells the story of how the United States started as a decentralized league of states where most power was held by localities, and that got transformed into a bastardized, centralized power bastion that wages wars across the seas and maintains an empire throughout the world now. Take a look at that. No obligation, no cost for that. Just click the link in the description below, plug in your email, and I'll send it to you. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.